Let me show you the Revelation slide from Patmos Arms. JSD Supply is a big friend of this channel, and Jordan sent me a couple of their Patmos Arms Revelation slides. Now I'm going to show you the slide, but unfortunately I'm not going to be able to show it to you on the range because we're currently in stage 2 fire restrictions in Montana and we can't do our shooting out on the ranges. As soon as those restrictions are lifted, we'll get out to the range and put this slide through its paces. Now the kit that I received included the slide, barrel, recoil spring, and all the internals to build this slide up. It also has a slide cut for an RMR and sights. Now these are blacked out sights, so there is no dot to them. But that's fine because sometimes blacked out sights are really good for competition. Now this slide goes together just like any other Glock slide. But there is a trick. Most people don't know that in Glock slides, there's a channel liner. And typically, you'll need a tool just like this to install the channel liner. But fortunately, JSD Supply did supply a channel liner and a plastic tool to install that liner. To install the channel liner, you'll use the channel liner tool that they send you and the channel liner. And what you do is you simply put the channel liner onto the channel liner tool and then insert the channel liner into the back of your slide and keep on pushing until it stops. From there, you just pull out the channel liner and the channel liner is installed into your slide. Our next step is to assemble the striker. And the tools that I'm going to use is my bench block and a 3/16 inch punch. And what I'm going to do is put my bench block down and just pop my 3/16 inch punch into my bench block. That way I can have the much needed third hand to put this together. From here, we're going to pull out our firing pin spring, our firing pin spacer sleeve. Now this will look like the channel liner, but it's a little bit shorter and it has this groove in it. That way the tail of the firing pin can go into it. Now the other things that we're going to need to pull out is the spring cups. Now our first step is to install the spacer sleeve onto the firing pin. And to do that, we're just going to slide that firing pin right in. And you can see that spacer sleeve extends past the firing pin. From here, we can put that onto our punch. We'll then take the spring and slide it on. And you can see that that spring is much longer than the firing pin. This is where these little cups come into play. Now you'll see that there's a smaller portion and a bigger portion. And what happens is these smaller portions will actually hold the spring in, while the bigger portion holds the cup onto the firing pin. Let's just take the spring off for a second and you'll see that there is this smaller portion onto the striker itself. That's where those cups are going to be held in place. So with the small portion facing down, we're going to slide this down and put that into that groove. And then we're going to take the other one and do the same thing to the other side. So now we have that firing pin or striker completely assembled. Now let's install the striker assembly into the slide. Now to do this, we're obviously going to need the slide and the striker assembly. But we're also going to need the firing pin safety and the firing pin safety spring. Now it's really tempting to put the firing pin safety spring into the firing pin safety. But the problem is it's going to have to get installed like this, and you can see that spring fell out. So what we're going to need to do is put that spring in and just kind of tip the slide and put it in on an angle, slowly raising that slide. And you can see now it's under spring tension. We'll push that safety down and install the striker. Now, before we install the extractor, we're going to need to assemble the extractor plunger. Now we're going to need the extractor depressor plunger, the extractor depressor plunger spring, and this spring-loaded bearing. Now this next step can be a little tricky because we're going to need to put this spring onto this plunger. But there's two sides to the plunger. You can see this big side and then this smaller nub side. And you're going to just push that spring on. And sometimes you'll need to twist a little bit to get that spring onto that nub. Now once that spring's on, we'll take the spring-loaded bearing, which is just a plastic piece, and that will go into the back side of the spring, and if you keep pushing, you'll get a little snap and it secures. The next step is to install the extractor and then the plunger. So on this extractor, you can see there's this rounded side. That's going to go towards the rear of the slide, and we'll slide right into place and then take the metal side, and there's a hole right here in the slide that you just slide that into place. Now this slide plate holds everything together. And what we're going to do is we will start the install of the slide plate because there's this little groove into the back of the slide. And what we're going to do from there is we're going to take a punch and we're going to push in on the back of the spacer sleeve here. So that way that slide cover moves forward. Now I'm going to take a 3/32 inch punch. I'm going to push in on the back of that bearing there. And then push forward even more onto that slide cover until it goes into place. Now, when you get to the end here, it gets really tough and you're going to need to push pretty hard until you hear that snap. With the slide put together, now all we need to do, drop in our barrel, take our recoil spring, and you can see there's a wide side and a narrow side. That narrow side will just go forward. We'll push forward and put that recoil spring into place. From there, you just need to install the slide and you're ready to shoot. Now, as I said before, we're currently under fire restrictions and we can't get out to the range to shoot this slide. As soon as those fire restrictions are released, we'll take this out, put rounds through it, and really test the slide out. Thanks for watching. Hope you're staying safe out there, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.